Hello everyone. So the number one question I get, and I get it all the time, at least once every week or two, is you've filled out your application, you waited to get any kind of response. Well, finally you got the email and they want to set up a phone interview. Everybody wants to know what's involved in that phone interview. And that's a very good question because this is a major step. You know, the application's easy. You type that out, send in all your info, yes or no to all the questions, wing, bang, done, you know? The interview is a different story. You're talking to a human. So today's video is about that interview, what to expect, what does it involve, how deep do they go, all that kind of stuff. So first of all, you need a plan, because they're going to ask you when you want to do this interview. Plan for about 20 minutes, maybe a half hour. A lot depends on your particular details. If you're a pretty simple person, if you don't have a lot of details, then 15-20 minutes. But give yourself time. That's important. That way you're not rushed. You don't have something else on your mind. You want to be calm, cool, collected, and most importantly, focused during the interview. Because this could be, not to overemphasize it, but this could be life-changing. This could be a chance to be a Walmart private fleet driver, and that's a pretty big deal for a lot of people. So anyways, plan for about 20 minutes, half hour or so. Second, during the interview, first of all, just relax. Relax. It's just another person on the other end of that phone, in spite of what I just said about it being, life-changing. Just another human being. Just talk to them like a person. Again, be confident without being cocky. They do not want super truckers. If you go into this interview with the attitude that I've been driving 25 years. I'm the best driver there ever is, man. I know everything there is to know about trucking business. Well, they're gonna forget this person. They want somebody who, not only is safe and all that stuff, but somebody that will learn the Walmart way, the Walmart culture, do things the Walmart way. You'll hear that a lot. The Walmart way of doing things is very important to them. So don't be a super trucker, just be a regular person. So again, all the things on the application are easy. You just have to answer yes or no, but now they're going to ask you all these same questions that were on the application, such as your qualifications. Do you have at least 30 months of experience? Do you have no preventable accidents in the last 3 years? And all that same checklist of questions, they're going to ask you those verbally, one by one. So you need to make sure your answers on the application match your answers in the interview. If there aren't, if they don't match up, they're going to ask about, hey, well, you said this over here. What about this? So just be ready with those kinds of answers. If they do have any questions, like regarding your work history, do you have the full 30 months of experience? If you need to explain any of that with dates, have those dates in front of you ready, so you can confidently say, yep, this is what happened, this is why X, whatever. So just be ready with those kinds of answers if they come up. They're also going to ask about your driving history, of course, same thing as the application. However, they may go a little bit more in depth. If you do have an accident in the past, I forget how the application asks you, it says, do you have any accidents in the last 3 years? Or any preventable accidents in a commercial vehicle in the last 3 years? What the recruiter may ask you is, have you ever been involved in an accident in a commercial vehicle? So if you had something 5 years ago, be ready with those details. That they're going to want to know those details. So again, all that list on the application, they're going to follow all that, but they're going to go a little bit more in depth. So besides all that stuff, once you get past all that, then they're going to talk about job duties as a Walmart driver. What are you going to be doing? What does this job entail? They'll explain different schedules on both the regional OTR routes, the local routes, and so on and so on. And they'll typically describe a job duty and say, are you okay with this? You know, is this something you want to do? And you have to answer yes or no to those questions. I'm pretty sure they're following a script. So, you know, they have to ask all these questions, even though you applied for the job, obviously you want the job. They're still going to explain the details of the job and confirm whether or not this is something you're ready for. The same thing with your driving history and accidents. They're going to talk about your work history. And so be ready with those answers and names and dates and where you worked, how long you worked, when you left, why you left, what were your duties for that job. For example, I mentioned that I was a CDL instructor on my application, because at my last job, I instructed CDL students. Well, the recruiter wanted to know, well, were you driving or were you in a classroom setting? I had to explain that I drove. I took my student with me and we learned on the road, so that I had continuous tractor trailer experience. So anyways, I'm just using that as an example. They're going to want the details of your work history going back however long it is, you know. I think on your application you're required to list the last 10 years. So just be ready again with those names and dates if the recruiter happens to ask them, because you don't want any gray areas where you don't have the answer. They may skip over you at that point. Well, let's get somebody else who's ready for this job. Same with criminal history. If you have no criminal history, great. If you do, I think the application, it's been a long time, but I think the application asks, you know, have you ever been convicted of a crime in the last 5 years or whatever it is. So it's easy on the application to answer yes or no, but now you got to respond to that question with details. I think the recruiter still asked me, well, you know, do you have any crimes in the last 5 years? No. Okay, that's it. They'll go on with that. But if you have it, again, details. You see the theme here? Have your details ready for this phone interview. That's pretty much the most important part about this interview. They just go over all the same things that you said on the application. And they'll chit-chat here and there about other random stuff too, just to kind of put you at ease. And that's pretty much it. You know, besides all of the driving history, work history, criminal history and all that, they're going to do a thorough background check in addition to all of this. So, you know, don't think this is be one and done and it's over with. You know, at the end of this phone interview, provided everything goes well, you're going to be invited to onboarding and you'll schedule a date to go to onboarding. But in the time frame between the interview and onboarding, they're going to do a background check on you on all kinds of stuff. So make sure you're honest and you tell the truth, because they don't play games with that. Lastly, during my interview, the recruiter talked about Walmart culture. As I mentioned earlier, you know, doing things the Walmart way. There's a Walmart culture of how we conduct ourselves in public. The uniforms, you know, stuff like that. Are you going to be okay with that? If you know, encounter the general public in a certain way, are you going to be respectable? Obviously, you're going to answer yes and all that stuff. In my interview, the recruiter also presented me with a couple of driving scenarios and asked me what would I do in that situation. That was a curveball for me. I didn't expect that. I think what he asked me was, let's say you're going down the highway and you forgot to get off the exit, and the exit coming up, you're going to miss the exit. There's a car next to you on your right side. What do? Do you force your way over to get off that exit? Or, you know, what do you do? Of course, your answer is obviously going to be, no, I'm just going to do the safe thing. I'll just go to the next exit and turn around. Well, what if that makes the load late? Well, so be it. The load's just going to have to be late. I'm not going to make an unsafe move and risk anybody's safety to get that load there. So if they do ask any questions like that, any driving scenarios, obviously answer with the safe thing. You know, they don't care if that load is late. No late is worth getting into an accident or worse. So they're very simple scenarios they present you with I would think, a very obvious answer, but always think about safety. So, all right, folks, that's pretty much it. I have my next trip to get to. I just thought I would run this by you guys because I get this question, as I mentioned, all the time. What do I do in the phone interview? And I understand that's a very important moment for you guys. It was for me. I wish I had someone back then to, give me some tips on what to expect. I had no clue what I was walking into with that phone interview. But it's no big deal. It's just a wrap session. It's just you and the recruiter chatting. That's really all it is. It's just confirming everything from your application. And hopefully by the end of that interview, you'll be invited to onboarding, and that's the big deal right there. All right, folks, I'm gonna head out of here. Thanks for watching. I will catch you on the next video as always. Thanks for watching.